Hey guys, what's up? It's Simba here. Thank you so much for joining me on the Vision Board podcast.
Okay.
Hey guys, welcome to the Vision Board podcast. And this gentleman, I thought he was a model. I thought he was an actor, but he's actually running for mayor. We got Cory Deville in the building. Cory, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really grateful that you got a chance to hop on the show. Like I
For
mentioned,
sure.
there is a lot of candidate
Yeah.
running for mayor. There's a lot of people. Um, can you just give us a little background on like what you do and like how did you get started in this whole race?
For sure. So my background's in philosophy, which has
Mhm.
nothing to do with what I actively do present day. But when I was younger, I really wanted to know, or really have the capacity to think, as opposed to just learn about X, Y, and Z. So I
Gotcha.
studied philosophy at UT, and then I kind of stumbled into a lot of startups. I think we were all kind of fed this narrative of go to school, get the job, get the career, and that was a lie. So I had to really take a step back and say, how do I expedite my own journey? And
Right.
in working with a lot of startups, you're exposed to CEOs and other executives that typically are too far away for you to touch.
Mhm.
And in those roles, I was really able to use them as a litmus test to say, hey, what are you doing now that's effective and what are you doing now that's not effective? So that in 5, 10, or 15 years, I can apply these learnings today. And so when I aggregated further, I realized that I now had the skill set rather to launch my own endeavor. And so I launched a fitness company, more so
Okay.
inspired by the fact that I like to bodybuild, as per
Okay.
my Instagram and some of the shameless content. And then once I launched that business, I realized that I could continue the process in other spaces. So I currently work in the consultative space. I help companies get bigger, faster, stronger in a business development and revenue perspective.
Okay.
And it's only been recently that I've taken steps into politics. And a lot of that was actually induced by COVID. I think it was the first time that the average person had a real sense that the government wields a lot of unspoken power, and that if you don't care about politics, it doesn't indemnify you from the impact of government. So I thought someone needs to take a step forward and occupy institutional positions of power. And that person needs to reflect the people, either culturally, either being as a person of color, or even generationally. Growing up as a millennial or a Gen Zer, the way we interact with the world in terms of how we think and how we feel is so disconnected from our parents and our grandparents. And that's not an inherently bad thing, but I think it's to say that leadership ought to mirror the people, and some things are experiential. So, what it is to be a person of color can only be known by people of color. And when you look at Toronto or Ontario and even Canada at large, this is a diverse country. And so that was the
100%.
inception for me really saying, hey, I need to get involved.
I love that, Cory. I want to ask you, the defined hope. What does that mean?
Mm. In many ways, I think that the Defiant Hope is both the name of my campaign, but it's also a quiet mantra I speak for myself. It's my way of almost pushing myself forward in a space that I'm unfamiliar with, in a space that I cannot control. And I think, quite frankly, in a space where the odds are stacked against you. I am an idealist, but I'm not naive. I know that occupying the position of mayor or prime minister or what have you statistically should be impossible, but there's that sliver of hope. And so I lean into the defiance of hope and remind myself that the scope of my ambition is vast. I do not have the luxury of just being hopeful in the fingers crossed sense. I need hope with teeth. I need hope with fire. And I think in many ways, I was subconsciously pulling from President Obama. His campaign was the audacity of hope. And while he and I do share some parallels in how we think, I do lean a little bit more towards Malcolm X. You see it in memes now where it's mess around and find out, for lack of a better term. And so I had to find a way to blur the two worlds together. So you get the defiant hope.
Okay, so obviously you ran last year, in 2022,
Yep.
and it is
Mm-hmm.
2023. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think is going to make a difference for you this year than it was last year?
Yeah, so no, I always try to remind people that my stepping into politics is not purely for the mayorship in and of itself. Yes, would love to win. Yes, I want to occupy the position of mayor. But I went into last election saying, hey, my genuine goal is to run for prime minister in 2025. But I knew that I
Okay.
could not do something like that without building up political momentum. And so when
Mm-hmm.
looking at the different times of when elections were happening, I realized that Toronto is a big enough city that it has the social clout for someone to be seen or heard, but it's not so big that you'd be overwhelmed. And so me running for mayor is really my first step to a larger goal. I appreciate that. So that was the first component of it. The second component is to say, I need a way to actively learn by doing. You know, it's not enough to discuss all the changes you want to have happen in this world with friends or family. You need to put yourself in a position where you're genuinely vulnerable and when you
Mm-hmm.
can learn. And so last election, I went into the campaign saying, hey, the KPI or the key performance indicator for me is I need a major media outlet to validate me to the people. And the
Right.
idea behind this is that people will not invest their hopes and dreams in you as the first investor. They want to know that someone's already done a background check on you. So, and being featured on CP24, down when we were talking about housing, that was
Yes.
the external validation I needed. That's when I noticed people realize that, okay, he's not kidding when he says he's stepping into politics. The
Yeah, I
difference with,
will I will say you were on the list with Chloe Brown, Olivia
Mhm.
Chow, and a lot of other people, but I would like to know, like, okay, so these are the candidates you're going up against, right? And they have their own policies and they have their own regulations in place. What what is it that you're gonna bring if you get selected for mayor? Because we've seen what happened to our previous mayor. I mean, what is it that you're bringing to the table when you get selected, if you get selected? What's the
Yeah, no,
first
I
thing?
think what I bring to the table. So the
What's your
first thing for me
priority? I
is
guess the question is my question is the priority.
yeah.
What's your
So
priority?
my first priority is going to be housing. I think
Housing,
that
okay.
when you look at a city, it's the city cannot thrive if it's worried about survival. So steps one, two, and three from a policy perspective for me all center around what does a society need to thrive.
Yeah.
And so I think housing, food, and mental health. If you do not have any
Housing,
of those
food, and
three, you
mental.
cannot have a society. So housing, food, mental health. And when we expand into it, I'm the first one to admit that the housing crisis is not going to be an overnight solution. We
Yeah.
need to look at it from an incremental perspective. How do we make the problem manageable, even if it's by 10% and then 20, then 30, and build up that momentum towards a solution? And the way that I propose we do this is through a renters relief rebate program. So it functions like a monthly dividend, where the government is essentially allocating a certain percentage of your rent back to you, much
Right.
like an allowance, much like a rebate that you would get quarterly. It does not solve the problem, but what it does is it slows down the burn rate. And that's really what we need. We need a second to breathe and strategize long term. But you
Mm-hmm.
cannot do that if you're constantly trying to catch your own breath. But to answer your question more directly, the thing I think I bring to the table that differentiates me from other candidates is an even blend of idealism and pragmatism. I have
Mm-hmm.
tremendous ambition for the city, but I am not so naive as to assume they'll happen overnight. I'm really big on incremental success. So if
Mm-hmm.
we have 365 days in a year, what do we need to do month one so that month three is successful? How
Mm-hmm.
does month two carry us into the next quarter and really
Love
build
that.
on that?
Love that.
Mhm.
And okay. So I agree, like housing, um, uh our safety, food, all of that is important. I was mentioning to lots of candidate that when you're running,
Yeah,
we want to believe you. We want people to be on, like we don't want an AI uh mayor. We want someone who doesn't look at stats and who's actually in the streets, who's actually running the talk, and also running, like getting in the room, being in the room, right? Inviting people in the room, younger folks, older folks. And my issue was, okay, I felt a real disconnect with like the mayor previously, and I kind of feel like a little disconnect with who's really running. It's
yeah,
not because I don't believe in their policies, but it all sounds the same.
Yeah.
It sounds okay, sounds politically correct. It sounds okay. I'm
Mhm.
gonna take care of transit because a lot millions of people and billions of dollars are invested in there. I'm gonna take care of education because millions of people are, or I'm gonna take care of like shelter housing because a million people are involved. It's just okay. Create something else. We know these are the structure you're trying to recreate, but create
Mhm.
more, add on. Like that's what the people want. We want it to be focused, tailored to the people of Toronto.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
um I guess you're on the right track with what you got going on. You have a real nice resume. A lot of companies that you've founded. I love it. And the people, I guess, do think that you're you're a great person, and people do believe in what you're saying. And I personally would say that if you did open like I don't know, a startup or a donation campaign, millions, thousands of people, if they've heard you speak and if they know you, they 100% contribute. But final question I want to ask is any advice you would have for someone trying to get into politics?
Mhm. You know, the biggest thing with politics is you're working in a system that's kind of inherently broken. So picking up on that intuition that you had earlier, where it feels like every candidate says the same five things, and you're
Yeah,
not wrong. We do. Um, I think the differentiator and really the thing that people need to be cognizant of before they get into politics is that it's a tremendous ask to request one person, let alone 3 million people,
yeah,
to invest emotionally in you.
yeah.
Because we've seen this experiment of politics fail so many times. And so I'd say you really need to come to terms with the fact that the system will be against you, that the people will be dubious, and rightfully so. And if that is enough to stop you, you should not be in this space. If I refer back to the first election, people have a way of trying to sugarcoat things. They're like, hey, you did a good job, or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I lost the election. Like, we need to be really candid with what is and what is not. The differentiator between me is, and you sort of touched on it without knowing, is I've actually been working on a nonprofit organization
Oh,
during this campaign. And the logic is that I need a way to build a platform that allows me to act as the shadow mayor if I'm not the elected mayor. I need a platform and a way to show the city I wasn't kidding about the change. I don't need the title of mayor in order to do it, but I
love it,
do need your buy-in. So
love
for
it.
me, it has to be a win-win scenario. And to shamelessly plug it in, we haven't launched yet. We're waiting until Juneteenth for obvious reasons. It's called BAM, which stands for By Any Means Necessary.
By any means
And so
necessary. Love it.
yeah, so BAM. And the logic behind it is that you need the courage of your convictions if you're to enter politics, and you really need to go beyond your comfort levels because people will challenge your credentials, your credibility, the authenticity of your campaign, even myself. If you went onto my Instagram page and you never had the opportunity to speak with me, you might think, oh, okay, he's a pretty boy, this, he wants to be a reality star. And that's
Oh
just the opposite
man.
side, right? And
Yeah,
that's cool. So you need to be very self-aware, I think, if you're to step into politics. That would be my number one piece of advice.
love it. Okay, and our
Mhm.
final segment is what is a soundtrack that defines you?
Mm.
What song are you feeling currently right now?
You know what? I'm gonna have to give it to Lupe Fiasco,
Oh,
Superstar. That's kind of the soundtrack that sings
Lupe
inside.
Fiasco Super. Oh, we got it then. We're gonna add that to the outro. Cory, thank you for getting it done at the Vision Board Podcast. How can people find you on social media and vote?
Definitely, for sure. You can visit me on Instagram at Cory Deville, or check out devilleparty.ca.
All right. There you have it. Thank you, Cory. We'll keep in touch.
Thank
I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
you. Take it easy.
All right.